A lot of you have been sending across questions regarding Zoho Books. How do you set up Zoho Books? So I have decided that I'll make a series of how-to videos so that it can help you in certain aspects when you're setting up the software for your organization. So these videos will be helpful for anyone who is migrating from an existing software into Zoho Books, or anyone who's wanting to use Zoho Books for the first time for their organization. If you're watching this video, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel. And if you like the video and it proves to be useful to you, don't forget to hit that like button. It would mean a lot. So in this video, we are going to be talking about how do you import items into Zoho Books. In a previous video that I had created, I had given a demo of Zoho Books. So in that demo, I have covered how do you create an item. So if you're wanting to add just 2 or 3 or 4 items for your organization, you can directly use that option. I'll make sure to drop a link to that video in the description box down below. But this video is specifically where you want to add a bulk of items into Zoho Books. It'll be really time consuming if you add one item. So we are going to use a format. We're going to use a CSV format, and using this format, we're going to import all the items in Zoho Books. There are a few specifications that we need to follow. So I will be taking you through it step by step. So stay tuned till the end of the video and you will easily get to know how do you add a bulk of items into Zoho Books. Let's begin. So let's say you want to add items in Zoho Books. You could be migrating from an existing software. So you would want to add all your inventory to Zoho Books, or you might be starting a new business where you would have a lot of purchases. So you want to add the items to Zoho Books. Always remember, the first step in setting up the software should be adding the items. So let's see how do you add items in bulk. Now, if you see on your screen, right beside the hamburger icon, you can see these lines. Now, the minute you click, you see that there are 2 options here, import items and export items. We are going to be using this feature of import items to import items in bulk in Zoho Books. As soon as you click on import items, there is a sample file that you can see. You can right click and you can download that sample file. Let's see how that sample file actually looks. This is how the sample file looks, and this is how it will be downloaded. But what I have done is, I have actually prepared a proper format for you to import. This format is available in the description below on the link that is given. You just need to download that format, put in all the data that I'm explaining, and you need to upload it to Zoho Books. So it'll be easier for you if you just follow that format. Now this is that format. The data is to be uploaded in CSV, that is comma separated value. It is an Excel file, but it does not have all the features that an Excel has. Now let's look at the columns that are required to be imported and what data can you actually fill in. The first thing that it requires is item name. So what are you trying to import? What are the names of the items that you're trying to import? Then it asks for a description. So let's say in this case, the description is ready-made garments. So I can put ready-made garments. If you want to put a specific description for the item, you can put a specific description for the item. Let's say you're selling some footwear. So whatever items that you're selling, you can mention them in the description. Right now, I'm leaving the description blank because for me in this case, all the items are going to be identified using the item name and SKU. So even if there's no description, there is no problem. You need to decide how are you going to identify your items. Is there going to be an SKU, or are you going to use the item name? SKU is nothing but a storekeeping unit. SKU is a unique number that is given to your items so that it's easier to identify. So the minute you scan that item or the minute you type it in the SKU, you will know what is the item, what is its rate, and what are the other aspects related to the item. You may or may not want to enable this based on the nature of your organization. Now, if you want to disable the SKU part of it, you can go to preferences and under item, you can disable SKU. You can treat it as inactive. So the minute you say inactive, it will not be mandatory for you to give the SKU for all the items. Now in this case, let's say I have an SKU. The next HSN and SAC code. Again, if you don't know what is an HSN or SAC code, you can refer to an earlier video that I've created. I'll make sure to drop a link to that video. So you have to define the HSN and SAC code of the product. As we all know, very recently the government has announced that at least a 4-digit HSN code is mandatory for organizations with turnover up to rupees 5 crores. Of course, provided they're selling in B2B, and there are other conditions related to it. So, however, if you are registered, it's better you define your HSN and SAC code item-wise. Then you need to determine the status. Status means nothing but whether the item is active or inactive. Now, sometimes when I'm creating an invoice, if there are so many items from which I have to choose, or when I'm typing in, I'm getting confused. Why? Because certain items are no more in stock. I can actually treat them as inactive. So in that case, we put the status as inactive. However, if you are adding it for the first time, then in all cases, it will be active. So I've put the status. Product type will be either goods or services. If you're providing a service, your product type will be services. Usage unit, again, this depends on what is your product. Now, if you go to add items and if you want to add a single item, you'll see all these variables that have been asked. Same thing, okay? Name would mean item name, SKU, unit. Now, if you go under unit, you'll see a drop down of the units that are available in Zoho. So are you selling box wise, or are you selling something that is in centimeters, feet, grams, kgs, whatever is the item that you're selling, you can select the unit accordingly. If it's not available, you can also go ahead and configure under configure units, and you can configure it, right? So that completely depends on the product. So accordingly, you can mention the pieces. Then whether or not it's taxable, you're required to select whether true or false. So if it's true, this item will automatically get selected. And if it is non-taxable, it'll ask for an exemption reason. So here in this column, exemption reason, whatever is the exemption reason, it could be it's a exempted supply. So you can just say that it is an exempted supply. If it's a nil rated supply, you can say it's a nil rated supply, and so on. So whatever is the reason. Then you need to mention the rate. Now rate here meaning your sale value, your value of sale. At what price you're going to sell the product. So you select that. Then account. So here if you see under sales information, as soon as you put the selling price is nothing but the rate column that we just saw. Under and after that, there's an option of account. So here you will be required to select where do you want these sales to be recorded in your accounts. Is it sales account? Is it other income account? So you can create a specific account under accountant and chart of accounts if you want to create a specific account. Otherwise, in all cases, the default account is sales. So I've put the account. As I said, exemption reason. Then it asks me for certain purchase information. So at what rate did you purchase the item? You can mention the rate at which you've purchased it. Then what is a purchase account that you want to use? So you can use cost of goods sold. It completely depends on where do you want these purchases to be recorded in which account. So based on that, you can select it. Default account is cost of goods sold. Then it asks for certain tax information. Now, Zoho has defined certain formats for tax treatments. So for example, if it is a nil rated product, you have to say GST 0. If it is taxable at 5%, you're going to say GST 5. Now, when I'm talking about intra-state transactions where CGST and SGST is leviable, I will say GST 0 or GST 5 or GST 12 or GST 18 or GST 28 as the case may be. However, in case of interstate products, I will be required to select, or I'll be required to mention IGST 0, IGST 5, IGST 12. So this is already defined and it has to be written as it is. You cannot add spaces, you cannot make changes, it has to be written as it is. So let's say in this case, it's taxable at 5%, and that is why I'm going to say intrastate tax GST 5 and interstate tax IGST 5. So based on your item, you'll be required to give these details. And then based on what you've selected as a group, you would say interstate tax is 5% and interstate tax is also 5%. Now, the next item which says intrastate tax type. As we all know, in case of intrastate, there are two taxes that are leviable. Which are the two taxes? CGST and SGST. Now, the software treats CGST and SGST as a group. So that is why we've written group here. But again, this is not something that you need to mention. You can just delete this and not mention it. It's absolutely fine. Why? Because you're using the correct terminology of GST5 here. The software will understand what you're trying to say. Then again, for interstate, there is no group. Why? Because there's only one tax, that is IGST, Integrated Goods and Services Tax. So you just need to mention simple here. Again, even if you don't mention this, it's fine. You can just delete it. It's not necessary. When you're adding any stock items for the first time, you might want to put their opening stock. So in that case, the rest of the columns become useful. So you'll have to mention the inventory account. Let's say in this case, I've selected the default account inventory asset. You can create a finished goods account, or you can create a raw materials account, or whatever you like. So you can create that account and mention it here. And then you need to mention the initial stock. What is the stock of that item? And you need to mention the initial stock rate. What is the rate at which you're holding the stock? In most of the cases, again, you can contact your CA if you're not sure, but as a default, you can always link this to your purchase rate. So you just take the purchase rate and value it at that rate. There shouldn't be a problem there. If it's a moving item, there shouldn't be any issue. And lastly, you must mention item type inventory, right? After you mention all this and fill in all these details, you will save the sheet and you will close it. Now we're going to try and add the sheet in Zoho Books. We're going to import this sheet. Let's see how that goes. Now I'm using one of the free accounts that is available with me just to show it to you. But you can use any account, whatever account that you're using. It could be the free account that Zoho provides up to 25 lakhs, or it could be the government account that your free software, which is available for GST taxpayers up to 1.5 crores, or it could be a paid version. In all the versions, it will work the same. So I'm going to go to items. Under items, you can see that hamburger icon on the right side. And right next to it, I'll select those three lines under which I will select import items. Now we're going to choose the file that we just created. You just have to say next. The minute you say next, now it's going to try to understand what you're giving. So see, what are we doing here? We're feeding some information in the software, but the software needs to understand what information we're trying to feed. So if I use a terminology which only I understand but the software doesn't, this is where I can link the two. Now in our sheet, we are using a sheet that is provided by Zoho. So the software will understand all the terminologies. However, say you add an extra column and the software doesn't understand which is that column, you need to link it here. Like for example, now in this case, purchase description, it's saying that you haven't defined purchase description. Why? Because in our sheet, we do not add any purchase description. But let's say you want to add some purchase description. You want to add whatever details. You want to add the bill number, or you want to add some details in the description about the item. So what the software will do is, it'll give me all the columns in my sheet, in my CSV sheet, and I just need to select which column represents purchase description. You need to map the fields. This is called as mapping. Now, after map, in this case, I don't need to make a lot of changes. Why? Because the sheet is fixed. You just need to use that sheet directly. Do not use any other sheet. Why? Because it will be easier. Now, after I've done that, I just need to select next. Now, items that are ready to be imported, it says that you have 12 items which are ready to be imported. Number of records kept is 0, which means all the items are fine. There are no errors. You can see there are certain unmapped fields. Now, in this case, where I'm importing, the person is not GST registered. So that is why some of the fields are unmapped. In your case, they'll all be mapped. Why? Because if you're GST registered, you're providing the respective tax details. Now I'm going to say import. All the 12 items have got imported. and all the details that I wanted to insert have been inserted. So if you go to edit, you will see all the details that you wanted, right? Now remember, if you make a mistake, it's very difficult to undo that mistake. Why? Because you'll have to go to each item. You'll have to first mention that the opening stock is zero and the opening stock rate per unit is zero. You'll have to save it. And only then Zoho will allow you to delete that item. So what I mean here is, before you're importing the entire Excel sheet and your entire inventory, which consists of thousands of line items or hundreds of line items, you should try and import just one item using the same format first. The minute you've imported that one item and it gets imported perfectly, then you can go ahead and import the entire sheet. So this is about importing items in Zoho. If you have any questions, you face any issues, please let me know in the comment section down below and I will be happy to help. My name is Nikita and I will see you guys in the next video.